Okay, welcome back, guys. So, in this video, I'm just gonna give you some pointers here to keep in mind when you're starting this game. I talked about in the introductory doing some videos, giving you a little bit more information here about this game. I've learned a lot in the time. Some that I do recommend if you really want to get into this game. There is an app. I know it's on the App Store. I don't know if it's on iPhone, but it's called Game Guides. It's a little
All these
green box
workers
with a
going
white
about their
controller in it.
business.
I highly
How
recommend
lively.
it. It has all the information I'm going to give to you is on that app already. Basically, what the app does is allows you to access the wikis in an app form. So you can use it for other games. I've used it for Dark Souls. Dragon's Dogma is one of the ones I use it a lot for, that and Dark Souls. Because they're games that don't necessarily spoon feed you all the information. So it's nice to have that community there to back you up. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about is some of the things with character creation. Things that, these are going to be things you want to know to start the game if you want to stay informed. So, first thing I'm going to talk about is actually creating your character. So these are certain things that matter. You wouldn't think matter, but this game takes into account things that about your character. Like, so for example, it gives you your height and your weight. Um, my height is 166. This is in metric. Even if you play in the U.S., it's in metric. I believe it's centimeters, 166 centimeters, and then 43 kilograms, I believe, is what they measure it in. So I'm not. That's what probably about maybe I think 90 pounds, 100 pounds, not even that much. And the height's about I think 5'6" or something like that. So I'm average, height, lightweight.
This inn can
Now
serve as the hub of our journey.
you
For
think
lodging.
nothing matters for that, but let's take a look at Deathstroke here. He's a much bigger guy. He is, let's see what he's coming in at. So he's 211 and he's 143. He's almost 3 times my weight. Now, what this means is normally you wouldn't care, but why give you this information? Why? Because it matters in this game. He's taller and he has a longer stride. He can also grab things better and he can climb enemies a little bit better. But his weight also plays a factor. So he weighs more and he's taller. He can carry more weight. So if you look at my inventory, don't look at my numbers. I have a feat that or a augment that kind of changes those a little bit. If you look at Nicole's roughly the same build as mine. She's my pawn. She's carrying 12.2 kilograms. She's in the light category. Deathstroke, on the other hand, is carrying 20.35. He's carrying almost double that and he's still in the very light category, only halfway through it. He can go up to probably 30, maybe even 40 before he gets in the light. Why? Because he's a big guy. He can carry a lot of stuff. So take that into account. Something else that is kind of interesting is, so I put on this lantern. You can actually see the lantern hangs on your side. If you're not tall enough, if I were to jump in this pool and this lantern touches the water, it'll actually go out. There'll be times where wading through water, my lantern will go out. Deathstrokes, on the other hand, will hang a lot higher and he'll be able to go in a lot deeper water. Now, there are downsides to being bigger. So I'm smaller, I'm lighter. I can run faster, and I also use less stamina when I run. I can run for longer because I weigh less. Um, it's kind of interesting mechanic. Not only that, there's sometimes where certain heights help you. So if you're small enough, there's a point in the game where you're in a goblin fort. You can actually go through goblin tunnels if you're under, I think, 4'9" or something. You can go through those tunnels. That's pretty cool, right? Now, the next big thing we're going to go into is, so first, you got to make your character. How you make it's really up to you. That's just things to keep in mind. They do affect things. So if you want to make someone who can climb really well and run really fast, you might want to keep them light. You want to make a big fighter that wants to carry all your shit for you because you're lazy and you don't want to do it? Make Deathstroke. Good pack mules. Big guys.
A fellow
Now
would be
let's go into your thing.
smart to getting
So
good with
there's
just a
also, when you
have you
start out this
played come
game, there's
against
3 vocations available to you. You pick one of those 3 for you. And when you get your pawn, you pick one of those 3 for them. When you get to certain part of the story, 10th level is when you can change. However, in order to change, you also have to make it to Grand Sword, which is where I'm at. Now, if you're with Dark Arisen, so if you're playing this PS4 or you're playing PS3 Dark Arisen, you can just go to Bitter Black Isle and change this as soon as you reach level 10. Whatever. Up to you, but I'm going to use Absalom because I'm already in Grand Storm.
a fellow would be smart to getting good with
Now, if you
just
talk
a
to him, he
have you
lets you
pick
change your
any you
vocation.
like.
I'm going to go over a little bit of the vocations here. You have your first main 3, your fighter, your strider, and your mage. Fighter is your sword and shield. They are your bread and butter melee class. They take hits. They dish them out. They're pretty. I mean, if you've played any games, you know how Sword and Shield Fire works. You played Skyrim, you know. Pretty basic. They are good to have in your party if you know want someone to be a meat shield. Then you go to Strider. They're a little bit more rogue-like. They use daggers and bows. So if daggers and bows, it gives them access to range, which is really nice in earlier in the game. Not only that, so there's also different stat growths for each character. Fighters get a heavy stat growth into defense, physical, and HP, and stuff like that. They also get a good melee attack. Striders, on the other hand, focus a lot on stamina, and they just have even stats across the board. They're kind of your jack of all trades. So they're a good class to go with if you don't know what you want to do yet, because they can transfer well into any class. Then there's the Mage. Mages are your spellcasters. They are normally squishy. They don't have a lot of physical stats, but they have good magic. And the big thing about mages, the reason why everyone loves mages in this game, they can heal you. They're the only class that has access to healing spells. I recommend always having a mage in your party. That's why I made my pawn a mage, because I'm very particular about what spells my mage has. I'm picky, so it's easier just to make my own. But mages are great to have. Those are your three basic ones. You can pick any of those. Your main pawn can pick any of those right when you make them. Then you have your three advanced vocations, they like to call them. So you get to your warrior. This is basically like an upgrade on a fighter. These aren't really upgrades though. They're more of a linear movement. They just change a little bit. But this is your melee advanced vocation. Really strong, really slow. Swing big heavy weapons. They move slower than fighters, but they take hits really well. They have a lot of HP, and they can dish out a lot of damage. They have one of the higher stat growths for physical attack. Then you get to Ranger. Ranger is essentially the Strider, but more focused on long range with that bow. So the Strider uses a short bow. The Ranger uses a long bow. I mean, look at that shit. It's about the length of her entire body. Crazy. But yeah, you take that bow, and now you are essentially a sniper. That thing can deal tons of damage, but it's fires slower, and it's not as good at close range. There's actually like a table, like so much distance from a target, this bow does this much percent of damage. It's really complicated, but basically your longbow, you want distance. And they are really strong. They're also not as good at climbing. Striders are your best class, well, one of the best classes, if you want to be climbing all over the big enemies and stabbing them in the face. They are really good. They get a lot of bonuses to climbing, and they are deadly at it. Ranger can do the same because they use daggers, but they're really good with the bow. And you have Sorcerer. If you watched my first video, you saw a little bit of Sorcerer play. I'll probably play a little bit of the Vocations later, maybe show you some of the different ones. But Sorcerer is your offensive-based magic. They don't have healing magic anymore, but they have some powerful spells. You watched my other video, you saw it. I was summoning meteors, creating tornadoes, walking around like an electricized freaking lightning rod. They're offensively based magic. They're slow casting, but they do a lot of damage if they get it off. Now, your pawn can pick any of those 6 vocations. However, there's 3 more vocations only accessible to you and not your pawn. They are called hybrid vocations. Basically, they combine 2 vocations together and get a little bit of both. Mystic Knight is like a combination of your fighter and your mage. They have access to swords, maces, staves, and magic shields. So they have a lot of versatility in that. Basically, they're your fighter with magic. They can cast enchantment spells, support skills. They're also a really good tank because they can buff themselves with those defenses. They also can parry really well with the shield. Gives them some better bonuses. They're a pretty good tank. I've played as the Mystic Knight before. They're pretty fun. Now, with the Mystic Knight, they have a high growth in defensive stats. Sorcerer has the highest in offensive magic. Ranger has really good stamina. Super good stamina and decent attack. Warrior has really good attack, like I said. Now, the next hybrid is Assassin. Assassin has very, very versatile weapon choice. Sword, dagger, shield, and bow. I mean, they got access to range. They are your physical glass cannon. That's really what they are. They are truly, truly a powerhouse, but they are a glass cannon as well. They get the highest physical stat growth, but in turn they lose a lot of defense. Now, I like the assassin. It was my first character that I really played with. I loved it. I ran out of a sword and a bow, and my god, I could take anything down, but I was a glass cannon. If I got hit hard, it hurt. But normally I killed anything before it could even hurt me. Assassins are also, if you ever plan on doing solo, I know people have done it. I personally don't. I like having my pawns, but they also get abilities to help them when their pawns are dead, when they're traveling at night and stuff like that. So they're good for a solo, just to keep that in mind. They're also probably one of the deadliest when it comes to climbing, if not the deadliest. Their sword abilities, they get access, they're the only ones that get access to gouge. It'll tear anything apart while you're climbing it. Um, Magic Archer is one of my favorites. It's actually what I'm building for. I'm a sorcerer now, so I can bump my magic up a little bit before I switch over to Magic Archer. But Magic Archer is probably one of my favorite. They are essentially your strider. They use daggers, but they also have access to staff, and their bow, instead of being a regular short bow or a long bow, is a magic bow. The magic bow spells are pretty interesting, really nice to work with. Magic archers, though, are again kind of mediocre across the board in stat growth, which is why I'm using Sorcerer to pump it up. So they have really good magic defense. Don't know why they have the best magic defense in the game. Strange, but I didn't make the game. But they're really good if you build them right. Now, if you're not looking to be super competitive, you just pick a class and run with it. By the time you reach a high enough level, it's not going to matter. The classes all balance their stats out to what the class needs eventually. But if you want to optimize, keeping in mind some of these growths, something else that's important. So once you pick your class, you also get skills. There's some called discipline points. It's kind of like experience, but it's not tied specifically. So discipline points are a percentage of your experience. There's a big curve. I'll actually talk about it a little bit later when I go into skills and augments. I'll do that in another video. But with these are how you buy your stats or your skills. Your augments carry between classes, so there's some to keep in mind.
What will it be today?
But your main stats or main skills, you pick 6 for most classes. Some classes only get 3. Warrior is one that gets 3. I think they're the only ones. You only get 3 main ones. Then there's augments that you equip as well. So these are something that you want to pick for your class based on, this. And now some of the augments for your class may not be good, but another class might help. For example, Sinew. That's that thing that gave me that bonus to carry weight. That comes from the fighter class. That's the reason I brought the fighter up to so many ranks of vocation to get that. Game doesn't tell you that, but you can find that all in the app, what you want to do, figure out your build, or just play around with classes. I mean, there's no real downside. You take a level 2 dip into fighter, you're fine. Even if you want to be a sorcerer. Now you do 30 levels in fighter and switch over to sorcerer, you're probably going to be struggling a little bit. But I mean, that's the basics there.
The inn offers a clean bed, but it
see,
deals
what
in
else can I go
vocations and
over
skills
here?
besides.
So, that's what the other thing is. So I'm going to go into this a lot more in detail, but we're going to talk about pawns for a second. So you have your main pawn, and you have 2 pawns that you can summon from online or offline, because Capcom actually provides some for people that are playing offline or for speedrun. I would assume that's what they did in the PS3. I haven't checked. Now, your pawns are an AI. However, you can modify how that AI behaves a little bit by changing vocations. I'm going to start with Deathstroke because his are pretty easy to explain. I'll go into a lot more detail of these later because these are some that the game doesn't explain very well how they work. And it's a pet peeve of mine when I see pawns that have terrible, terrible inclinations. But just the basics here. Deathstroke has Challenger and Scab. So these ones are pretty easy to explain. Challenger, what that means is he's going to go after ranged attackers. That's his priority. He wants to kill the ranged guys, keep them out of the fight. Scather, on the other hand, means he's going to try and go after the biggest, baddest enemy, and he's going to be more inclined to climb that enemy to get to its weak point. So what this means is you have a primary, secondary, and then you actually have a third, fourth, fifth, and all that. The only ones you're ever going to be able to tell are your primary, secondary, and your third for your pawn only. For example, I can go sit in this chair over... Sorry, Absalom.
Come again soon.
I can sit in this chair over here. It'll tell me my third vocation. I'll go about that in a later video. But I can figure out what that is. So those are the 3 you can tell. Now, what this means is his primary is Challenger. He's going to prioritize ranged attackers. He's going to kill them all. Once ranged attackers are out of the issue and there's no more left, he's going to go after the big bad enemy, and he's going to try and climb him. He's going to try and do it. Now, what this means is in certain fights, he might not even pay attention to ranged attackers because there are none. So he's going to go after the toughest enemy. Now, say if his third one would be the next priority. So we'll go over to Nicole. So Nicole, I know her third one right now. It's actually Mitigator. So her primary one is Utilitarian or Utilitarian. So what this means is she's going to prioritize things like buffing, exploiting elemental weaknesses, stunning enemies, things like this. That's really good for a mage, not so much for a fighter unless they have a lot of knowledge on enemies, because fighters don't have access to boons, they don't have access to spells, so they kind of are limited in that. But it's so certain ones get better bonuses. Like I don't want Nicole to have a scather. I don't want her to climb enemies. It's terrible. But so she'll prioritize that. Next one is Challenger. Again, she's gonna attack range attackers. I like that because she's ranged herself, meaning she's gonna keep them off of me. Because I normally hide in the back, cast my spells. I hate it when a ranger comes by and knocks me to the ground with an arrow. Her third one is actually Mitigator. So what Mitigator is it prioritizes attacking the weakest foe to basically thin out the ranks. What this means is she's going to fight first of all with regards to weaknesses and stuff. So she's gonna buff me. If I'm fighting undead, she's gonna give me her holy enchantment. If she's fighting saurians, she's gonna cast ice spells. Those are her priorities. However, it also Challenger as a secondary means she's gonna do that, but she's also gonna focus on ranged attackers. And then Mitigator means when there's no ranged attacker, she's just gonna continue down the line and get rid of the weak enemies. She's gonna leave the big enemies to me, Deathstroke, and everybody else. She's gonna try and thin the herd. Another thing, they also gain knowledge. I was talking about Utilitarian, knowing about the enemies. Every enemy they fight, they gain knowledge on. You can see I have a lot of 2 stars. I have a few 3 stars. 3-star means they know everything there is to know about that enemy. 2 stars means they know a lot. Maybe they haven't fought enough of them, though, or they haven't picked up one piece of information. As you progress through the game, you'll get more and more knowledge, and then things like Utilitarian become much more prominent. So there's a bunch of different enemies. Every single enemy is in here. Every single one, even bosses that you only fight once, show up in there. But they all come up in different things. Now, for example, Deathstroke also has these. He can actually give me information about how to fight enemies. He could make a call like, for Saurians, cutting off their tail makes them weaker. So he can be like, strike the tail, it's their weak point. You'll hear that a ton of times. So it's beneficial sometimes to have pawns that know a little bit more. And also, say he didn't know that, but then I do it while he's with me. That means now he's going to know that. He's going to actually learn about Saurians with me. And then when I rest and I send him back to his, owner, he now knows that information with his owner. He's just gained more information and knowledge. Same thing goes with quests. So sometimes you're ever stuck in a quest, summoning a pawn that knows about that quest, that'll help you get through that quest a little bit better, stuff like that. So those are things to keep in mind. Areas, they'll know about different areas, stuff like that. Everything your pawn does, they gain knowledge on. The AI in this game is actually really interesting how they work. So it's just stuff to keep in mind, how you build your pawn, how you build your character. They can really come into play later. Most of this stuff can be changed at any time. You make a mistake, who cares? Fix it later. It doesn't really matter. You do whatever you need to. The only thing that really you're set in kind of is your physical stats. You can change this later, but it's a one-time change until after you beat the main story the first time, and then you can buy some that lets you change it whenever. So it's really good if you can always fix this later too. So if you just started the game and you're watching this and you're like, shit, I fucked up. Don't worry. Trust me, the game's forgiving enough. You will be able to fix it. I'll probably go over, I'll actually introduce you to the guy later on because he's important. But there's a guy you can buy a change for your character. You can exchange your appearance, your body weight, everything about it. By buying one thing, you can do it one time before main game, and then after that, you can buy another one that lets you do it as much as you want. However, I think this video has gone on long enough. It's really just supposed to be the basics. I know it's a long video for that, but there is a lot to go into this game. I could go on for hours about it, and to me, it's all still basic information, but I'm gonna, cut it off here. I'll go into more detail on the videos later. I'm definitely going to talk about things like pawn inclination. That's a big thing. I'm going to talk more about the vocations, where their strengths come in, and how augments work between vocations. I'm even going to talk a little bit about some of the other mechanics in the game, things like just interactions with NPCs and such. But for the most part, the big things I'm going to focus on are character development, things that the game doesn't really give you a lot of information about, and just knowing about helps you in this game. I might even do a little bit more about Bitter Black Isle and tell you guys a bit about that one, because that place is wicked. But right now, that's all I got for this video. So, I mean, thanks for tuning in, guys. If you like what you see, go ahead and subscribe, give me a like. I'm going to release more videos here. Like I said, I'm going to talk about some of the other things in this game. So stay tuned if you're interested in those. I'll probably get those up in the next couple days. So thanks for tuning in, guys. See you later, man. Have a good one, guys.